Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here in the month of October. I was looking over past WCW events, and last night I was able to watch WCW Halloween Havoc 1999, which housed probably one of the biggest mysteries to me in the dying days of WCW. What were they thinking? This pay-per-view was mainly supported by two matches. They were Hollywood Hulk Hogan going up against Sting for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, and then basically the main event of the night was supposed to be Goldberg versus Sid Vicious. And that match was only for the United States heavyweight title, but because it featured Goldberg, it was sort of seen in more of a main event role. Sting was the champion at the time, and Sting was portraying a heel. Hulk Hogan at this time, I believe, was not straight up Hollywood. I think at this time he was wearing the red and yellow. He was trying to make that the big comeback like he got in 2002 when he came back to WWE. It just wasn't clicking the way that it was supposed to. I think you needed to sprinkle some of the Vince McMahon magic fairy dust on there. But basically, when this match comes down, they announce that Hulk Hogan is making his way to the ring, and they play the Hulk Hogan music for a long, extended period of time. From there, basically, Hulk doesn't come to the ring. Then finally, they play the Sting music. Sting comes down to the ring, even though the champion is always supposed to come second. They're saying that Hogan is trying to play some sort of mind games, and maybe even making jokes that he's politicking in the back in order to help himself out. They start up the Hulk Hogan music again, and finally, Hulk makes his way down to the ring, but he's not wearing the red and yellow. He's not wearing the black and white. He's basically just, if you would have seen Hulk Hogan in the mall in 1999, this is what he would be wearing. I mean, he's got just jeans on. He's got his Air Jordans on. He's got this sort of, I think it'd be like a denim shirt unbuttoned, and a do-rag on. And he comes down to the ring and basically says to Sting that they're going to do this. They ring the bell. And almost like the finger poke of doom, Hulk Hogan immediately lays down in the ring, and Sting covers him, 1, 2, 3, and he gets the win. For forever, I've always wondered why Hogan would agree to this sort of finish. Was he just not wanting to go along with WCW's plans? But everybody knows that with Hulk Hogan's, I guess you can say, ironclad WCW contract, with him having creative control over the Hulk Hogan character and anything that he had ever done, this brings up huge mysteries to me why he would want to do this. I know the easiest answer is that Hulk Hogan would want something in return. We know that basically when Hulk Hogan announced that they were going to do the match with Goldberg on Nitro, where Goldberg won the championship, everybody knew that Hulk Hogan sort of had a deal that he was going to lose the Goldberg on Nitro, but down the road, when it was time, Hogan would be the guy to beat Goldberg and get his win back. Hogan was never able to get that win back, and I think some people make a lot about this, but some people say that Hogan cares about that stuff. Hogan never got a win back against Yokozuna. Hogan, basically brought Ultimate Warrior back to WCW to beat him at Halloween Havoc 1998 in one of the biggest, horrible matches of all time. I believe that basically the month before, Hulk Hogan's buddy, Eric Bischoff, was removed from Power in WCW, and Vince Russo was brought in. I don't think that Hulk Hogan wanted to play ball in the Vince Russo era, and I don't think that Vince Russo really wanted Hulk Hogan around in WCW either. I think that honestly this was just sort of way for them to come together. Hogan would go home. Hogan would basically sit on his couch and still get paid, and Vince Russo would be able to have his version of WCW without Hulk. Basically, it is very weird to me that over the next month, starting the next night on Nitro, well, I think we have to get through the chain of events, but basically Sting beats Hogan in 3 seconds with Hogan laying down in the middle of the ring. The next match brings up Goldberg versus Sid Vicious for the United States Championship. Goldberg ends up beating Sid due to a referee's stoppage due to excessive bleeding from Sid, and he ends up winning the United States title. From there, as the DDP versus Ric Flair strap match is going on, it is announced that Sting still wants to have a match on the show, and Sting has an open challenge for the end of the show. Sting comes down to the ring and is meted by Goldberg coming out. Goldberg defeats Sting in a very short match to end up the pay-per-view in only 3 minutes, and as the pay-per-view goes off, Goldberg is shown holding the United States as well as the World Heavyweight title. He is now the double champion that he was the year before when he defeated Hogan on Nitro. The next night, basically, I think that WCW was scrambling. They were trying to figure out what they were going to do, or maybe this was the plan, that basically Russo wanted to have some sort of a reset, and this was the one way to do it, using the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view, and they were going to set up a World Heavyweight Championship tournament, and I think doing that, you can see that they were doing a reset, because in the opening match of the tournament, we have Goldberg going up against Bret Hart in the first round. That's a very big first round match, seeing how, basically, I believe they had 64 competitors in this match because the WCW roster was so big. This is also a tournament that's been picked apart for years because of, people like Norman Smiley, Medusa, were featured in this tournament. Medusa got a win in this tournament. She was able to go on to the second round and have a match against Chris Benoit. But basically, the first round match between Goldberg and Bret Hart ended up being for the United States Championship in this match that Bret Hart won. Why would you be having a World Heavyweight title match, a World Heavyweight tournament, and then also at the same time have a United States Championship match inside of the tournament? That seems like two different matches that should have gone on. Bret ended up beating Goldberg and winning the United States title, which was never put on the line again in any of the matches, even though Bret Hart ended up winning the tournament at Mayhem, beating Chris Benoit in the final. Then I think they had to reset the United States Championship as well. But very weird that Hogan was nowhere to be seen during this tournament. We ended up not seeing Hogan again until, I believe, February at Slamboree, when he had a match against Lex Luger. And then Hogan's, time there didn't last long before he was gone, only to come back for the New Blood versus the Millionaires Club. Once basically Eric Bischoff was rehired and brought back to the company to sort of do co-booking with Vince Russo, because the Vince Russo era didn't pan out the way that they wanted it to. Of course, only a few months after that is where we would get Bash at the Beach 2000, where people say that, Hogan really walked out on the company, or basically that Hogan, and Russo came up with some sort of a swerve that still works today, that people still wonder, how much was real and how much was fake. One thing leads to another. Hogan ended up suing WCW and winning money because Russo ended up going off script. Hogan to this day says that he was double-crossed by Russo. Even people like Eric Bischoff say that basically the plan went down the way that it was supposed to. And maybe just Hogan had sour grapes against Russo and saw an easy way to make some money. That's why they filed the lawsuit. But I think Bash at the Beach ended up being the last time we ever saw Hogan in WCW. I don't think he ever returned after that. But you can easily say that looking at Halloween Havoc 1999 was one of the points you can point at to say that Hulk Hogan was done with WCW and was never really the same after that. And for the people that say that Hogan didn't really have a place in wrestling in the late 90s, once the NWO stuff was really done, look what he did. I mean, when he came back, for WrestleMania with the whole NWO return, and then having the match with Rock, and then even after the match with Rock when he split and became Hulkamania, red and yellow, running wild in WWE again. Even if they made a mistake by putting the championship on him, by having him beat Triple H, and maybe that was a little bit more than people wanted to see, people loved Hulk, and they wanted to see him back. And he really does have a place in wrestling. And maybe there's even a place for him in wrestling today, and they have to figure out what that's going to be and when they can bring him back. But, that was it. Halloween Havoc 1999. Sting and Hogan. Controversy.